A bit of a revolt in California, at least in the Chino Valley School District. The Chino Valley School Board voted to approve a resolution. And like this is some seminal thing, but it is in California and in so many school districts, particularly in lost states. Approve a resolution to inform parents if their kid is transing in school, if you will. So, boy identifying as a girl in school, wanting to be called a girl's name, so on and so forth. Going to fold the parents in and make sure they're aware. This is a revolutionary act in California. That's how off the rails things have gone. And interestingly, and this is strictly another case of a parental revolt, much like Loudoun and Fairfax counties before Glenn Youngkin's victory and so many other examples we've brought to you, strictly driven by the parents. And I'll tell you what, you get the number of parents to show up to a school board meeting as showed up to this meeting of the Chino Valley School Board, and something's going on. Something's finally resonating. And that's a good thing. Interestingly, the state school superintendent, Tony Thurmond, made his way out to Chino Valley to testify against the resolution. He tried to talk past his speaking limit, and the board chair cut him off. He kept talking. He had the state school superintendent escorted out of the meeting by police. Wow. Wow. And here was the reaction upon the vote by the parents in attendance. Little chance of USA broke out as well. There's a slice of California that's still in the United States. That's good to hear. On the flip side, when it comes to notifying parents, and this is the stage we're at now, this is the fight. This is how far the other side has advanced, this trans mafia, LGBTQ++, the Lavender Bund. Hey, look, I want to know, if I'm a parent, if there's trans adults on the administrative staff and in the teaching staff. I want to be notified. And I'm not saying that all or anything or one way or the other, but I am saying the incidents, just the data. I'm following the science and data. This Danish study we referenced earlier in the show, the suicide rate is 4x, suicide attempts 7x non-trans. The incidence of psychiatric diagnoses is 6x. So I want to know if somebody's an adult that's at my kid's school has a psychiatric diagnosis. I'm sorry, I want to know whether it's trans or non-trans. I want to know that. It's time to get a little bit more engaged and demand a little bit more disclosure.
I mean, if they know about our kids and control our kids and know things that we don't know about our kids, why can't we know about them?
And I know since they're mascots of the left, they're magical people. But there are stories like this, too. Stacey Marine Lawton is a former Democrat representative, first ever elected trans lawmaker, who is now facing up to 30 years in prison after being charged with aiding and abetting the sexual exploitation of children. Just what? Just
why
what I
didn't
said.
that make the news?
No, it made the news. I mean, the Daily Mail. It's not going to make
CNN.
the CNN or MSNBC, but it made the news. Yeah. She's facing 30 years for being charged with aiding and abetting the sexual exploitation of children, along with her partner, who is a daycare worker.
Oh, my God. The access he had to children.
I know they're magical people who can do no wrong and are to be celebrated unequivocally, but there's another story out of Oregon. This is going on, too. And I guess, frankly, if it's good enough for the military, then it's good enough for state departments of corrections. We mentioned the memo that Jordan Schachtel obtained last week on Friday, detailing all of the trans procedures that we're paying for members of the military. Well, that same thing is going on, for example, in Oregon. A trans who goes by the name Gaia Oh, sure, Mother Earth. Is been sentenced to 24 years in prison for sodomizing a little girl that he was babysitting. He is now up for taxpayer subsidized treatments, including facial feminization surgery, tracheal shaving, breast augmentation, electrolysis, and a
Oh,
transfer to a female prison.
oh, of course. And we're paying for it.
These are the extreme absurdities to which one must descend in order to accommodate the outcomes of the premises from which people start when they talk about this gender identity business.
So he sodomizes a girl, and then we pay for about $300,000 worth of surgeries.
That's right.
And then he gets to go to the women's prison, where what do you think he's going to end up doing?
Uh,
Going to be repeating his sickening behavior.
More likely than not. For more on all of this,
It's like Clown World.
we're pleased to be joined by Liz Wheeler, host of The Liz Wheeler Show at lizwheeler.com, author of Hide Your Children, Exposing the Marxists Behind the Attack on America's Kids, which we were just doing, actually. That's available on September 23rd, but I'm sure you can pre-order it at all the usual places. Liz Wheeler, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy. Thanks for having me.
It seems to me that one of the reasons that people like you need to be shouted down when you go to college campuses, speeches need to be canceled, Riley Gaines needs to be attacked, is because, God forbid, anybody who knows what's going on actually just lay out the stories and the details and who's paying for what and what certain people are doing and what the science and the data says. God forbid any of that get out to the larger population.
Well, that's why I wrote my book. I mean, even before we get to the book, I spoke at James Madison University in Virginia in April, so just a couple months ago, and a thousand radical trans activists showed up outside of the speech to agitate and try to shout me down. And the debate team at James Madison University, the debate team issued a formal condemnation of my appearance at their school because the title of my speech was The Ideology of Transgenderism. As the name suggests, I unpacked the political ideology that underpins it, the political ideology being queer theory. The left is very afraid that we will accurately identify their strategies, accurately identify the why behind these attacks. When I set out to write my book, I, as many other parents in this country, had seen these attacks on our children ramp up. This is nothing like we experienced when we were in school, 20, 30 years ago, nothing. We watched over our children's shoulders when they were on Zoom school during COVID, and we saw this poison, critical race theory being poured into their minds, transgender ideology, your truth, my truth is more important than me truth, moral relativism. And I thought to myself, why is this all happening at once? It feels like a concerted effort. So I delved into this, and it turns out the answer to this question isn't so much a why as a who. Who is behind this? So what I do in my book is I name the names of the people and the institutions that are behind the capture of our institutions and the attack on our children. And I say the capture of our institutions because 4 out of 5 of our major foundational cultural institutions, the media, the education system, religion, the law, and almost the family, have been captured by the left. So I not only name the names of the people and the organizations behind this capture, behind this attack, I offer a solution that I will admit is different than the solution the Republican Party offers for how we can retake our institutions and therefore protect our children from this utter madness.
I know you want to save some for the book or for people to read the book and tease it, but can you name some names for us today and some institutions that are behind this?
Of course. And some of these names you'll recognize because they're active players in American politics, names like Emily Drabinski. Emily Drabinski is the president of the American Library Association, meaning she picks the books that our children see in children's library sections all across the country. In fact, yesterday on Twitter, she posted a video talking about organizing, and she's a self-avowed Marxist. When she won her position at the American Library Association, She tweeted how crazy it was that a Marxist could win this position.
Right.
Oh
She
my
tweeted
gosh.
yesterday a video of herself talking about how important it is to keep books like Genderqueer, this pornographic book, in the hands of children, and how we must organize, and the word organize to communists means different than how we define the word, how important it is to organize to keep those books in the hands of children. So I identify her. I identify the communists behind technocracy. Now, some people might say, okay, technocracy, what is this? Well, we experienced technocracy in a very frightening way during COVID, where we were told that we must obey the experts. The experts know best, and who are we to question them? I delve into who are these experts? Who are the people and the organizations that are determining how we should live our lives, and somehow that we're supposed to obey them? It's really shocking stuff. A lot of it you'll see in your children's classrooms, but it's beyond that as well. It's other aspects of our children's life. And what I say in the book is, if we don't recognize the reality of the political enemy that we face, if we neglect to be able to name these names, if we just think, oh, this is just the crazy left in a vague general way, then we won't be able to fight well against it. So the first half of my book is me exposing and naming the names of these people in the organizations, and then after we've established that, the second half of the book is my solution, what I offer for how we can reclaim our country.
Well, I mean, I can name organizations too. The Chicago Public School System, the New York City Public School System, the LA Public School System, all the public school systems, Disney, Fortune 100 corporate America, the Big Ten, the Ivy League. I mean, the Pac-12. I can go on and on. Point is that it's a personnel issue, but it's an institutional issue fundamentally, because the American Library Association can dump that Marxist for another Marxist tomorrow, and it wouldn't change anything. This is the capture of these institutions, and unless you get institutional change, taking out one executive director or one university president or one DI officer at Stanford doesn't accomplish much, seems to me.
That's exactly right. And that's why I discuss in my book, while it's fun to be able to name the names, and there are certainly plenty of self-avowed Marxists and communists who are at the helm of many of these institutions, it's been more difficult for Republicans and conservatives to eradicate this poisonous ideology from our institutions, because sometimes it exists in the form not of a person, but of a prevailing ideology. For example, we're all familiar with the word woke at this point, but within the last couple of months, there's been this debate among conservatives about what the definition of woke is. So in my book, I trace the word woke back to its origin. And its origin was a Brazilian Marxist named Paulo Freire, who contended that there was no such thing as truth, no such thing as knowledge. He said that quote-unquote knowledge that was being taught to our children was just the prevailing political narrative. Now, this is an inherently Marxist idea, right? And he said that we should not be teaching quote-unquote knowledge, meaning political narratives, to children in school. Instead, we should teach children to view the world through the lens of critical consciousness. Now, critical consciousness is just a euphemism for teaching children to view the world through a Marxist lens. But this critical consciousness was directly imported from this Brazilian Marxist to the American school system, and it now exists in two forms. The colloquial term that we use to describe critical consciousness is wokeness. That's what it is. But it exists in a curriculum form in social emotional learning. And I trace the direct line between this Brazilian Marxist to social emotional learning that every child in every school in the country will encounter in every class. They are being trained using a tactic of a Marxist that lived 100 years ago. Once you see this stuff, you can't unsee it, which is exactly what parents need to see, so that we can, even if there's not a person that you can name as being a current person, as the head of the organization that's in charge of this, you can identify the ideology and say no to it.
She is Liz Wheeler, host of The Liz Wheeler Show at lizwheeler.com, author of Hide Your Children, Exposing the Marxists Behind the Attack on America's Kids. Liz, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.